Hi, my name is Bailey, and I'm responding. I'm doing the discussion post too, with the responding to the mental health articles. There's a couple questions at the bottom, so I'm just going to answer those first. So it says, "What information in the article or audio story is surprising to you, and why?" I thought that the nurses having to detect mental health was very surprising because I think that's awesome, and I think it's cool that because, of course, they are the people who have like a mental health training or could potentially. I just thought it was surprising because I didn't think that every nurse in elementary schools, like the audio reading said, like some schools have one nurse for the district, some schools have one nurse for many schools. Not every school has just one nurse. So I thought it was interesting how they can detect mental health um, problems with kids. I think that that's cool, but I also feel like they should only be able to say something if they have a background in mental health and they're aware of it, because I feel like they could like diagnose someone wrongly, and um, that could like affect the kid some way. Like I know my brother had a hard time focusing in school, and he went to the nurse and they told my parents that he had ADHD or ADD, and they took him into a specialist and they said that he didn't. He's just a third grader with a bunch of energy. So I think there's like a fine line between um, being like specialized in it and being able to diagnose something and then just diagnosing something because you think maybe it's what it is. I think that they should have to have that mental health background. The second question is, do you feel that schools have a responsibility to assess mental health in their students? That kind of goes with what I said before. I think they should have the responsibility if they have the right resources and the nurses are qualified. Like I think that if they're not necessarily qualified and the school has a counselor, then they can refer the kid to go to the counselor and have the counselor diagnose them with whatever it is with her, if it's depression or there could be abuse going on in the family or whatever the issue is, like having a counselor diagnose them instead of a nurse if there's no mental health background. And then the third question is, what can be done to help address health issues in school age children? I thought that it was really interesting that they were like saying how like diagnosing mental health at a young age is very beneficial, because that story with Bob or Bobby, whatever his name was in the article, um, Bobby, I think, he was being abused at home and then grew up, and then in his 30s had um, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, had anger issues because of the abuse that he was going on at home. So I feel like with those kind of things, in that situation, a teacher could talk to the parents and say, hey, look, Bobby's been acting out in class, and see kind of how the parents gauge it. Because I feel like if the parents are like, oh my gosh, that's not normal, he's not like that at home at all, or if they're, acting differently, then they can kind of adjust from that situation. Um, I think the first thing that came to mind with reading the article and listening to the audio tapes were like, you don't know what goes on at someone else's home. Like, you don't know their story. So I think it's cool and interesting how, like, it could be that a teacher or a friend or a counselor or someone realizes that there could be something ongoing at home just based off of if a kid's acting different or if there's like issues and like the way they behave around other students or don't get along, that there could be something involved with that. Um, I also thought that it was really interesting how they said that like people only pay attention when a tragedy hits, and I heartedly, hands down, agree 100%. Like um, to get a little personal, my friend committed suicide his senior year of high school, and no one really paid attention to it until after it happened, and then people started to become aware and stuff like that, and just stuff like that goes on all the time where no one pays attention to it until a tragedy happens, and then everyone starts to pay attention to it. And I feel like we should try to find those pink flags, like it said in the audio tape, where like figure out the pink flags before something tragic happens, like before a red flag happens. So I thought that was really interesting too. So yeah.